you're an expert in analytics,
Yes.
and this is a digital marketing show. It's important for people to understand at least the basics of analytics. So I thought it would be cool to have you on. Can you share your background?
Sure. So, it, in terms of what's applicable from an analytics perspective, I ended up in the mid 2000s buying media for one of the publicly traded weight loss companies. And when I got in there, it was very quickly brought to my attention that there was this major problem. And the problem was that they were running all of these CPA campaigns with billions of impressions each month. They had about 5 different vendors. And what that meant is for every sale that they had, each of the vendors was claiming credit for the sale. Now, normally that's not a problem if you're buying things on like a CPM basis, but when you're paying commission, they were actually paying out 5 commissions for every sale. Not a good thing. So the only way to go about that was to get an ad server. And so I priced out DoubleClick at the time. And because of the number of impressions each month, it was around $80,000 a month. And the CEO of the company said, no, we're not going to pay for that. There has to be some other way. So I ended up building out a solution to figure out who won that conversion, which of the 5 should get paid, if they should get paid at all. And then that led into almost every week, my team coming to me saying, hey, what about this problem? What about that problem? And I thought I was just building out something for one customer to solve their immediate problems. I didn't realize that other folks were dealing with this on a massive scale. And so what I built within 6 to 8 months ended up morphing into one of the first multi-touch attribution platforms called C3 Metrics. And so I shifted over from what I was doing there to going full time into analytics around 2008. Now, I wasn't excited about it because what I liked about media and marketing is that it was cool. It was sexy. You're the guy or gal that gets to come in with the big idea and help execute or watch other people execute your really big idea that's going to change things for a company. Whereas analytics is like numbers in a spreadsheet that seemed absolutely miserable to me, which is why I didn't go into math in college. That's like analytics is something that your CPA friends should be doing. But what quickly started to happen is we started to onboard a couple of other clients. I realized I was in the middle of everything that was going on in media. I was dealing with some of the, most innovative CMOs in the country and in the world who had really cool ideas. And I was now on par with them. But not only that, I could see their ideas execute and I could measure the effectiveness of it. And so that became very sexy and very exciting for me. So I scaled up my first company, C3 Metrics. We focused primarily on larger enterprise clients that spend in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars each year. I exited that company about a year before the shutdowns. I felt like I had done everything I could do. I'd spent 12 years in it and said, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm done. And then with the shutdowns came this massive shift in terms.
Sorry, explain what the shutdowns are.
With COVID.
Okay.
No, a year before COVID, the shutdowns. That's what I meant. Sorry. So that was around, what was that? So that was
2020.
2020. So 2019 is when I left there. And then in 2020, because of this move towards privacy, the kind of the advertising ecosystem shifted. So the way we used to do measurement before COVID is we had to collect 100% of the data. And what that meant was putting a tag on your site like GA4. And then we would put a tag in the ad server to collect all of the impressions. And then our platform would actually connect together every ad you saw with every click, even if it was a month or a year later, and then use machine learning to figure out on scale what's working and what's not working. Well, with COVID came the removal of those impressions. You couldn't get those impressions anymore. And we also saw consumers shift in terms of how they use the web. It used to be people would go from website to website. And now, even more so now, we're going from app to app. And now we're going from marketplace to marketplace. And each one of these, if you want to think about like YouTube is its own ecosystem. So if someone clicks off of YouTube and goes to your website, You know that they came from YouTube, but you don't know how many of your ads that they saw. The same is true of Amazon, of Walmart, of all of these places. So we're now living in this world where we can't get all the data we used to get. And for folks who are used to buying very detailed segments and audiences on Facebook, know exactly what I'm talking about, because over the last couple of years, you've gone in to, keep a campaign running, and there's this big red notice across that says this audience is no longer available. When the money runs out on this, you can't add any more. I remember my friends in the auto business, they used to be able to target like Ford F-150 owners who are leaseholders whose lease is going to expire in 6 months. I mean, you could get that detailed. Well, that world's gone. Can't do that anymore. So the ability to target at a user level is not there anymore. So we've kind of had to pan the camera back a bit and look at things in a broader perspective. And so what I did is that I looked at what data was available, what I kind of foresaw was going to be available in the future, and built out a new analytics measurement platform that used the available data, but also gives marketers essentially what they need. So I started a new company around 2022 and have started to scale that up now, called Provalytics. So I'm still in the same business, and it's still sexy to me because I get to see what's going on, which is pretty cool.
This method of marketing is so effective, I had to make sure it wasn't against Google's rules before I kept doing it. It's a form of SEO I call compact keywords. Whereas most SEO focuses on putting up articles to answer questions how, what, when, compact keywords focuses on putting up dozens of pages that sell to searchers who are actually looking to buy. These pages rank on Google and convert so much better than normal that when I discovered this years ago, I couldn't believe this was allowed. It's less work too. The average compact keywords page is only 415 words. Compact Keywords is a 13-hour deep course on getting sales with SEO. A customer recently said, "Each lesson is dense with information. You're giving years worth of experience boiled down into 15 to 30-minute lessons with no filler or fluff. I feel like I'm gaining a new superpower." Compact Keywords is about setting up an SEO funnel that brings you sales for years and years and years. It works with AI, it's less work than traditional SEO, and it makes way more money. You can get it now at compactkeywords.com. Back to the podcast. Suffice it to say, you are an analytics expert. You are someone who is good to explain analytics to people who might not think about it that often. We talk about on this show a lot about search engine optimization. And when you're doing SEO, you're looking more at things like backlinks. You're looking at Google Search Console. You're looking at SEO tools. You're looking at GA4. Some people are also running ads and doing tons of other different marketing campaigns. But it's so important to understand at the very least the fundamentals of analytics and how analytics are gathered. It's important to understand things like cookies, things like pixels, all the different terms that you just mentioned. And so, yeah, I think you are a very good person to explain, especially just starting from the fundamentals of analytics and tracking, how it's done, what things mean, especially geared towards somebody who is like starting to learn digital marketing, because there's also people who listen to this show who are they're just starting to dip their toes in, and they want to learn about it. They want to become really great, but in order to become really great, you got to learn the fundamentals.
Yeah. So analytics, to really kind of step back from it a little bit, is the output of your marketing efforts. And your marketing efforts, you could think about, are paid marketing, that paid ads, your owned marketing, and your earned marketing. So that could incorporate everything from you running ads to you creating content, your SEO, if you will, or your GEO these days. And then you could also include in that some PR or public relations. You could also include in that your organic content on social media as well. So all of those things together lead to people becoming aware of you and either purchasing your services or your products. Now, let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to the future to think about how things were before there was digital marketing. Because before there was digital marketing, all we had were things like, and I shouldn't say all we had, but we had television, we had radio, we had direct mail, and we had out of home or billboards. There were things like directories, like Yellow Pages. I spent so much money on Yellow Pages ads back in the days. But the key with all of that we did back in the day before digital is that you would run an ad and there was not a direct link to see how someone came in unless they walked in with a piece of paper or a coupon. That was the only direct link. And yet there were these brands that were able to grow massively, like BMW and Pepsi and Coke. And they used analytics to determine what was working and what wasn't working. And so to understand those analytics, we really have to understand how marketing functions. And the best way to do that is to think about what was going on before digital, and then we'll incorporate digital. So the way marketing works is you are actually doing marketing. This would be running ads, your SEO, your PR, your organic social to get attention. That's the job of marketing, is to get attention. You want to get attention to build awareness. And when awareness is built up enough, I like to say that people will walk into your store. And if your store happens to be online, that will mean clicks. And then those clicks will then lead to leads or sales or whatever it is that you're doing. So back in the day, they would use analytics and they would run statistical and use deep math to figure out how many ads were running on a weekly basis and then compare them to people walking in the store or actual sales. And that's how they decided what was working and what was not working. When digital marketing started and people started tracking, we became hyper-focused on the concept of clicks. And most people today, when they think of analytics, they think of clicks. But using that example, it starts with that attention, which is way up. But most marketers today believe that we invest dollars to buy clicks, and clicks lead to leads, and they lead to sales. But clicks is the bottom part of what happens. Now, the problem is that the companies that are selling ads and selling services, they make money when you focus in on clicks, because everything that you buy in terms of ads is this bid that's going on. And so the more people that are bidding against each other, the rates are higher and the publishers make more money. But focusing down at that bottom part leads to you missing out on building more awareness. And that's the most important thing. So the way to measure is obviously you use something like a GA4, but this is where it gets difficult from an analytics perspective. So let me give you an example, Edward. Let's say that you have created this, let's say you're this amazing gardener and you've been frustrated with gardening because you use a hose for a season and then it leaks. But you've created this amazing new hose. It doesn't leak. And you've created this great 60-second promo video, and you decide to run paid ads on Facebook and Instagram with the video. And you've got a great name for it. So you run an ad in Google. So someone types in the name, they'll find your site and they'll buy from you. Okay. So somebody comes along, they're scrolling through the Facebook feed and they see this video and it's got a cool, that first 3 seconds to capture their attention.
Has a good hook.
They watch it for 2 or 3 seconds. And so now you've got their attention, but they don't do anything else. A week or so later, they're scrolling through Instagram, they see it again, and now they watch the whole video. And they say to themselves, hey, that is the best looking garden hose I've ever seen. When my hose dies, this is the hose I'm going to get. And a couple weeks later, they're out gardening. They turn on the hose and it starts to leak. And they're like, oh my God, should have gotten that hose. They take their phone out. They search for the name. They find it. They click and they buy. And you get a sale. And you look in Shopify. It shows you that the sale came from your Google ad. You go into your Google GA4. It shows you the sale came from there. Multiply that by 1,000 times. You have 1,000 sales at the end of the month, and you're going to look at your analytics, and it's going to tell you that all your sales came from Google. You're going to see in GA4, nothing came from Facebook. So you're like, what am I doing? I'm going to cut all my spend at Meta. I'm going to cut my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'm going to give it all to Google, which is exactly what Google wants. Now, the craziest thing is that since that process from attention to awareness to desire and the actual action of purchasing took like over a month, when you cut your spend, you're not going to see sales drop immediately. It'll take 3 or 4 weeks until that happens. And this is the problem with analytics, is that it can lead you can be data driven, follow the numbers, but it kind of leads you in the wrong direction because it's focused on clicks. Now, if you were to look into Facebook, because remember you had 1,000 sales and GA4 shows all 1,000 sales, you go into Facebook, you may only see 650, and they're going to tell you, we got you those 650 sales. So now you have 2 different versions of the truth, 2 sources of truth. But let's say you expand. Let's say you decide to start running ads on Hulu. Well, now you have a 3rd version of the truth. You start running other ads. Before you know it, you're not even spending a lot of money, but you have 7 or 8 different versions of what actually goes on. And this is the problem for most organizations, is they're focused on the clicks. They're not focused on what brought in the attention. And what we find with most marketers is that they'll have a Google sheet. You probably got one yourself, Edward, that has every day, and it shows you how many clicks you got, how much you spent that day, your cost per click, your cost per lead, your cost per sale, whatever you've got. And that, again, is focused on the bottom of the funnel. And I've seen marketers, they'll show me their Google sheet. They'll show me the graph of the clicks and how it correlates to the sales. They'll show me the conversion rate. But there's a quick DIY trick that I would encourage newer marketers and even experienced marketers to do. And what that is take that same Google sheet, re-download all of the data. And when you do, there's a column that you ignored. And that column represents the attention-getting metric. The one, if you remember that example of the hose, it caught your attention on Facebook. It was about a week or 2 later that you watched it, and about another 2 weeks later till you actually purchased. And that metric is called impressions. We're not talking about view-throughs. View-throughs is a measure of what that platform says that they got you a sale. Forget that number. I don't care what Meta says they got you. What you want to know is impressions, because those are your attempt to getting attention. And what you want to know is every day, how many eyeballs actually saw my ad and I attempted to get their attention. So now if you look at your Google sheet, you'll have a date, you'll have how many impressions you had, you'll have how many clicks, and then how many leads, sales, so on and so forth. Now, when you create your graphs, what you're looking for is when impressions went up, and then it took time for clicks to go up. It's not going to happen automatically. It'll happen over time, and you want to start looking for those correlations. And you can just stand back from your machine and eyeball it, and then when you see it, you go back to that day when impressions were high, and you dig into the individual campaigns, and you do more of that stuff. So you want to optimize your campaigns, not on clicks, but based upon those eyeballs, because that's actually what you're buying. And that's how you shift your strategy from focusing on where everybody's competing to being more about building awareness, which drives more people through the funnel for you and keeps your funnel full. And that's the goal of marketing, and that's the goal of analytics. And so that would be my best guidance for anybody who's just getting into this or anybody who's experienced, is you need to kind of realign yourself to looking at that top part of the funnel to build out your own personal analytics stack.
What does your platform do?
So what our platform does is it actually creates a single source of truth for larger enterprise marketers. And so what it does is it goes in and automatically takes in all of the data from different platforms where they're at. It takes in very, very granular data, but it's daily data. So there's no user level data. There's no tags that go on the website. It takes in that data.
How does it take in the data?
Through like available APIs, or sometimes larger clients are doing stuff that there's no API for. So we'll get the data through an agency, and then usually their sales data is behind a firewall. So they'll push it to us through some sort of SFTP. And then we take that data and put it together and put it in our platform. And our platform goes through using a combination of machine learning and AI. And interestingly enough, it uses techniques that have been around for, one of them has been around for hundreds of years. But through the advent of how fast computers are running these days, we're able to determine what's working, what's not working, and then run scenarios of how to reallocate their current budget or future budgets in order to increase their return on marketing investment by as high as 50 or 60%. Because most marketers are actually wasting 50 to 80% of their dollars. So you could take most large-scale marketing campaigns, cut them by 60%, meaning cut the spend by 60%, and you will still get the exact same results because it's just wasted dollars. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Can you, okay, so going back to beginners, because I wanna help people who don't have enterprise companies. Not even beginners. I just want to help people who don't have enterprise companies. Can you explain the different types of attribution?
Sure. Yeah. So GA4, the best way to think about GA4 or any click-based attribution is primarily last click, last action. So whoever got in last wins. That would be kind of like, let's see, M&Ms. You know, everybody loves M&Ms. You know, that would be like M&Ms giving credit to the checkout person who scans it because he or she is the last person who touched it before you purchased it. Okay. But everyone knows that M&Ms, and in order for you to grab it, you had to know about it ahead of time. So that's last click. Now, some folks will focus on first click because what you're interested in, especially if you have a longer sales cycle, and certain types of products have longer sales cycles, I'd rather optimize towards that kind of first click, the top of the funnel. And you can do settings within GA4 and other platforms to focus on that. And then there's other types where you've got, there's like a curve where you could give credit to some to the first, some to the last, some to the middle. But again, this is all click based. And that's the problem, is that, GA4 does also incorporate what we would call impressions, which is those eyeballs, but only for Google products. That's the issue. It doesn't incorporate impressions from other platforms. It also doesn't incorporate products like podcast advertisings. We're on podcast right now. So there's no tab in GA4 for podcast or anything. So the way to think about GA4 is it's Google's analytics. That's what it is. So it's really, really good at measuring how Google says they're doing. But it's not good at measuring everything else. And then the other kind of attribution is what you would call data-driven, if you will, or algorithmic. And algorithmic uses an algorithm to determine what's working and what's not working. And then you could also say the newer form, which is also the way things used to be done in the past, is this concept of incrementality attribution. And incrementality means I want to find out for every little thing that I do, how many sales or how many parts of a sale did this particular ad bring me that I would not have received if I didn't run this ad. And that's really what marketers want, because the problem with last click or first click is they're going to give credit. Every sale is going to be attributed credit. The problem is that it's not incremental. And really, as a marketer, you want to focus on what's truly incremental. And that's what our platform does. That's what other modern day platforms are hyper focused on is, hey, when we give you a number, these are sales that were actually being driven by the ads. And you can drill all the way down to see the particular ad, the particular placement, the particular organic social post, the particular SEO pages that are actually driving that, and you get the actual incrementality for those.
There's also, you're running ads and you have algorithms learning optimizing for who is clicking and who is buying. But with attribution like that, it could take a couple of weeks. I mean, you have longer sales cycles for more expensive products. And then, the conversion happens in a different place and that ad platform doesn't know.
You're 100% right. That's part of the problem is that if you're just on Google and that's the only place you are, their campaigns are great in terms of training themselves and learning. But you have to understand that Google always assumes the only place you're at is Google. The same is true of Meta. And everyone knows when you set a campaign live, it has to go into training mode for a little bit, let you know when it's out of training mode. But they assume that they're the only person in the world. So Meta and Google don't know that you're also running television ads, or that all of a sudden you sent out 100,000 mail pieces to everybody in Dayton, Ohio. They don't know that. So they're going to take credit for those sales, but it was actually the direct mail that built that attention for you. And that's the problem. And that's where things start to get very complicated. Now, you go back a couple of years to where the shopping world wasn't as fractured. It was easy to stick in one platform and stay there and trust it. But now the problem is that, let's say you've got a hot product, you have a Shopify store, and now you're starting to notice there's a lot of searches on Amazon and competitors are starting to sell knockoff products. So now you have to be on Amazon. So now you're on Amazon and you're advertising and you make more money when people buy from your website. But consumers, you can convince people, hey, try my product, it's great. But you can't convince them to buy from you versus Amazon. They would prefer to buy from Amazon or Walmart, wherever they're used to buying. And that's part of the issue is that the measurement, like GA4, doesn't extend to Amazon. So now, and Facebook's measurement doesn't extend to Amazon. Ours does. Ours sees across everything that's going on, because otherwise you would be essentially running blind. And that's where things start to get confusing, is that as you start to scale, even for a smaller company, the more places you're spending, it's like you're in Vegas and you've got bets on 5 separate tables, all on different sides of the casino, and you got to run around and figure them out. And it's a difficult game to play without having statistics and modeling that are running 24/7 for you.
Yeah, that's why you need as much customer data so that different platforms can piece together if someone who saw an ad actually did end up purchasing through some other means, maybe a month later.
Right. And this is part of the problem, is that if you're a large advertiser, and let's say you've got, millions of customers and you have all their data, you can go to Amazon and they have this thing called a clean room where you can hook up your data and they'll anonymize it and they'll help you find when your customers, ones who know your product, are searching on Amazon, so that you can show them ads when they're looking at a competitive product so you don't lose them as a brand. Fantastic service. Well, can I take that same data over to Walmart? Oh no, you have to redo the whole process because Walmart and Amazon aren't going to share data. Well, let's say I'm in the dog food category. Well, now I want to do it over at Chewy. No, they're not going to share. Nobody's talking to each other. So if I run an ad on Chewy and someone sees that ad, but then ultimately they go and they shop and they find a better price at Amazon and they buy at Amazon, Amazon's going to tell me that they purchased because of my ad on Amazon. They don't know about the ad on Chewy. And neither one of them knows about my TV ads that I'm running. So this game is just getting more and more complicated. And now let's add something else to the mix as well, because you talked about SEO when we first started talking. That game has completely changed, because you go back 7, 8 years ago, all of search was essentially dominated by Google. So what did Amazon do? Amazon took their entire product listing that they had, every single product that they had, and they gave that feed to Google, and they said, anytime someone types in anything close to these product names, we want to be number one. And they were Google's number one customer for many, many years. And what they did is that they trained us. You know, we would all search for a product. We'd see a product on TV. We'd search on Google. We'd see that it was available on Amazon. We'd click on Amazon and we'd go over and we would find it. And how many times did it take us to do that to where eventually we said, maybe I should just search in the app directly. And once Amazon determined that, and that was this summer, the summer of 2025, they pulled the majority of their ads from Google. They're no longer advertising on Google. And what they have done is they have shifted about 35% of the search market is now in Amazon. So they took away search for products. So that's problematic if you were selling a product and you had a big SEO strategy, because majority of people in the US are now searching on Amazon. Well, now all of a sudden has entered ChatGPT. So people are now embedded in ChatGPT, and they just rolled out yesterday their new Atlas browser, which is going to completely change things as well. But that is going to take not just share from Google, but it's also going to take share away from Amazon because of the ability to talk via chat, get reviews from other sites, and then directly purchase through their chat mechanism. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shifts SEO. But as SEO shifts to more GEO, now we have to focus more on things that we used to do back in the day. Because back in the day, what did we do? We built websites and we made sure content was always updated. And then when social media came out, we now realized as small business owners, well, I have to have my social media up to date. And so what did marketers do? Well, they kind of forgot about their website a bit. They would hyper focus on social media. And a lot of SMBs haven't updated their websites in years with content. They primarily have been pumping it full of the social engines. Well, you know, the large language models can't go into Facebook to grab data because that's a walled garden. So now people are going to have to go back to the basics and start updating their websites again so the large language models can start grabbing that data. So it's interesting how this cycle has come around, and we're back to where we were in the beginning, if you will.
All right, I have an exercise. Let's say that you are starting a business, and you're starting a SaaS. You're doing a software as a service.
Okay.
And you're bootstrapped. And how much money do you even have a day? Let's say you only have, and maybe you're not going to do ads. Like if you're bootstrapped, and you know, this is like you're getting started, you don't even have that much money to throw at this. If you were to run ads, you would only be able to spend like $100 a day.
Okay.
But you are growing. You have a product that people like. When you do marketing for it, the marketing, wherever you do it, the marketing seems to work. There's some word of mouth. The landing page is converting. So my question is now you want to start running ads. You already have some organic going. You're active on, let's say you're active on Instagram and TikTok. You're using the same organic videos across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, because you can use the same short form videos across all of those platforms. So you're doing that. You have some SEO. People are finding you through SEO as well. You have some word of mouth going. And now you want to start running ads. And let's say you start running ads. Where's everyone going to run ads when they start? It's probably going to be, they're going to be doing it on Facebook.
Right.
So you're going to start running meta ads. And then in the future, things are working. You'll do YouTube ads. You'll do Google search ads. You'll do LinkedIn ads. But at the start, you're just going to start running meta ads. Now, remember, you already have organic going. You already have organic social going and organic search going, and that's actually working out pretty well. And now you want to start running ads. So how do you actually properly set up your tracking to make sure that your ad spend isn't being wasted? And then how do you scale up?
Yeah, great question. I would follow those same DIY techniques that we talked about. And I would make certain that, first off, that I'm tracking all of my organic content every single day. Now, that's difficult because when you think about how many views you get per day, these videos that you're running organic content, like if you've got them running in YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, it's a cumulative count. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're checking every single day. And you could probably now use some of the agentic stuff through OpenAI or Perplexity to grab those numbers every single day, because you don't want to know the total number. I want to know the total number each day. So
the issue with organic social is the conversions that you get might be branded searches. You have a video that goes viral on organic search, on organic social, and then someone is doing a branded search because they saw your name on TikTok and now they're searching for it on Google.
Right, but that's coming from the world of clicks. Remember, I'm not focused. Of course, when awareness is built from either a paid video or an organic video, and people say, hey, I want that, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to search for you and go through a branded search. But that's forget about the clicks, because you asked about setting up the tracking properly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. So yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah. So first off, I would make certain that I have my system in place that for each of my videos, every single video that I have, I'm tracking it individually every day. I've got the name of the video, what the content is called. And for every day, I'm making certain that I look at the cumulative count. I subtract the total from yesterday. So I have the actual count for every single day, the impressions of it. I don't care about clicks from it. Clicks don't mean anything. Okay. So I've got that all going. Now I decide to run ads. The nice thing about when you're running ads is that when I download reports from any of the platforms, it will tell me exactly how many impressions there were for every day. So I don't have to track it every single day. I can just pull down a weekly report, if you will. And so that's the important thing is, as long as I can get the impressions, I know how many clicks I'm getting because I can look on my website. I've got my web analytics up and running. That comes standard with pretty much Shopify and everything else. But I would not look at where those clicks are coming from, because that's total BS, because that's just how people navigated to your site. So ignore that completely. What you're looking for is the relationship between. So now you've got all of these tabs going in your Google sheet of every single organic thing that's going and every single paid ad. And then you've got a pivot going of the total impressions per day. And you've got a graph that is continuing to grow, showing your total impression count per day. That's what you want to be tracking. And don't expect if all of a sudden, let's say today, your impressions are 5x what they were the day before, because now you're running ads and it stays up there for the weekend, that you're going to blow the socks off and sales are going to go through the roof. I would not expect that at all, because all of a sudden you're out there. It's going to take time. Remember that example of the hose. So you have to understand that there is this time to conversion, because you're going to capture some people who already know about you and they're like, oh my God, yes, I have to buy that now. But the majority of people you're going to capture are at the top of the funnel. You're trying to get their attention. And that's the focus with this, is getting attention. If you get enough attention, some people will fall through, but that's okay. You're trying to create a machine where there's attention grabbing, awareness. It's like, what do they call it? AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, action. And that's the key with this. So the key to tracking, Make sure you can count clicks, but don't pay attention to them. But the most important thing is the impressions. That's how brands were built before digital marketing. That's how brands today, that are some of the largest advertisers in the world, measure everything, is based upon impressions. So there's no reason why someone who's spending $500 a month in ads shouldn't do the same damn thing, right?
So, okay. So, you have 3 channels going. How are you measuring the relationship then between trying to figure out which channels are working better than others, and by what degree?
Well, that's always the trick,
3 common channels, which is organic social, organic search, and social ads.
Yeah. So what you have to do, this is if I'm DIYing it myself. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm DIYing it,
You're bootstrapped.
I'm bootstrapped. I'm checking my graph, and I notice that, things went up, and then about 3 or 4 days later, clicks went up, and then I saw sales go up. And I'm like, okay, something happened in these days. So now I have to figure out what actually happened. And then you have to zero in on the particular day when things were going on. Something changed that day. Something unique happened. And you, as the bootstrapped solo entrepreneur, needs to dig in and figure out what that thing was that was different. Something went up more than it ever did before. You started something new. Something happened. And that is the secret to unlocking it, is figure out what that 1 or 2 things were, and then do more of those. That's really what, and that's essentially what our system does at its core, is that when you look at daily data across not just 3 channels, because it's not just 3 channels within organic social, you may have 18 videos running. Okay. And within paid, you may have 3 or 4 campaigns, and each one of those may have 5 or 6 ad groups, and there may be 3 or 4 creatives. So lots of combinations. So when you start to look at all of those, you're never spending the exact same amount of money every day, and your impression volumes are always different. Now, the gold standard to determining what's actually working and what's not actually working is to do a test. And what they call it is like a geo holdout test. So let's say I wanted to test Meta. I wanted to find out, I've never done Meta. Is it actually going to work? And let's say what I decide to do is I'm going to run ads only in Dayton, Ohio. That's it. It's going to be the only city in the entire country. I'm going to run heavy Meta for like 3 weeks. And if all of a sudden I notice that there's more orders coming from Dayton over the next 3 months, I know that that's what did it. That's like the ultimate, that's the gold standard. The problem is that to coordinate all of that across all your media, especially if you're a large advertiser, is nearly impossible. But like I said, just in those 3 channels that you talked about, when you get into the details, there's actually, you're doing testing every day, but it's small because one day impressions are up 10% higher than the norm, then they go back down. And what that also means is that your orders are slightly different. So these are micro experiments. And for larger advertisers, they're actually doing tens of thousands of micro experiments every single day. It's so small that a human can't figure it out, but machine learning and AI can. And that's essentially what our platform does, is it determines which of these micro experiments are actually incremental, or actually driving more sales that wouldn't have been there if they hadn't done that little increase. And that's the secret. So, but the key is, I'm a solo entrepreneur. I don't have much budget. So I've got to eyeball this myself. So you got to dig into that particular day, and then you got to make a guess. Which one of the 3 things, and out of that, which one of these campaigns, because you got to dig into those details. Once you've isolated the day, maybe you isolate which channel, and then dig into that channel to figure out what was it, what was different here. Once you figure that out, well, that's your lever to do more of that.
So one of the prompts that you gave me over email was what's the impact of going cookieless for marketing and advertising? Explain for beginners what a cookie is, and then why you might be going cookieless, and then what the impact is.
Yeah, so a cookie is essentially a small little text file that sits on your computer that you get when you visit a website. The best example of this is you go to Amazon.com and you sign in with your username and password, and it says, do you want us to remember you? And you check the box, yes. That way, every time you go to Amazon, you're automatically logged in. And what they did is they saved a little cookie on your machine someplace. It has a little encrypted code that says, hey, I know who this person is. Let them in, essentially. That's called a first-party cookie. That's a cookie that is set by Amazon. Only Amazon can read it. If you're on the New York Times or any other place, they can't read that. It's locked to only being Amazon.com can read that. There's another type of cookie called a third-party cookie. That's a cookie that advertisers use to improve experience, measure, and track you. A good example of that is that if I'm Volvo and I've got a new car that's coming out, and I think that you would be a great target for it, I maybe only want to show you 6 ads a day. And so what I do is that when you go to the New York Times and you see a Volvo ad, I'm going to set a cookie that's a Volvo third-party cookie that all it has in it is 1, because you've seen 1 ad. When you go to your second page, and it's going to count up. And once it gets to 6, what it's going to do is that as you load the page, it's going to see, oh, Volvo's at 6, no more ads for Edward at all, because I don't want to.
And it's tracking where the ads are showing to.
That's exactly right. It tracks all that, and it sends back information, and it allows you to kind of stitch together an entire trail, if you will, of every ad that you saw, every ad that you even scrolled over, and then every click that you did. So you can get this whole kind of user path, if you will. The problem is that we kind of have gone cookieless, not the kind that allows you to log in, but the ones that are tracking you across the different websites. Those are kind of going away, primarily because Facebook and these different walled gardens don't allow them. They don't work anymore on Safari or on iOS at all. Google has said, we're going to take them away. And then they said they weren't going to. And then they said they're going to take them away again. Then they said they weren't. And now it's kind of in this kind of middle ground, if you will. And we all remember the big iOS update where we loaded our phone and we went to like Facebook, Instagram, and it says, do you want to allow this app to track you across other apps? And everyone was like, of course not. Of course, most people didn't realize that before they had that, all of them were tracking you. So every app was tracking you.
What was that? That was iOS 7?
Oh, I think it was after that. I can't remember. It was called the App Transparency Tracking Update. I don't remember.
I had 2 founders on. Now they're at like 10 million ARR, but that almost destroyed their business, and they had to learn all sorts, because they were crushing it with Facebook ads.
Right.
And then they had to learn all sorts of other marketing channels, and they almost lost everything. It was like, yeah.
Because Facebook at that point became blinded to what was actually going on. And Facebook then could not track sales across different platforms. And so, in fact, still to this day, when Facebook tells you, hey, we got you X number of sales, their number is always lower than what it actually is, which is probably good for Facebook, but they're somewhat blinded because of that. And that update was done because of all of the global privacy changes in the EU. They came out a number of years ago with the GDPR, which essentially said, hey, if you have a list of consumers, guess what? That list is now gone. You now have to rebuild that list. You now have to ask people if they want to opt in. In the US, it's always been, hey, if you want to opt out, you can go right ahead and opt out. But we didn't force people to rebuild their list. But global companies like Apple and even Google felt like it was easier to comply on a global scale with that. And with with Google, what we saw with their ad products is an inability to get down to a user level. Now we can only target an aggregate. And if there's a small number of people, like if we want to target people, let's say in Dayton, Ohio, that buy a certain thing and there's less than like 1,000 people that they have, they won't let you target it. It's too small because they don't want you going down to that user level because they're concerned about privacy.
So what's the impact?
So the impact is we can't target like we used to. And that goes against what most digital marketers believe. Most digital marketers who have come out of college, like in the last 10 or 15 years, they believe that marketing is all about being hyper targeted, meaning, hey, why would you want to advertise on TV? That's the stupidest thing in the world. You should, if you know that people who smoke cigars, drive Volvos, and love soccer are the people that are buying your product, we can find those people for you, and we should only be showing ads to those people. And the answer to that is, well, not really, because there's the cost to deliver the ad, but when you add in those 3 levels of targeting, your cost of advertising is 5 to 6 times what it would normally be. So yes, you may get customers, but profitably, you probably won't be profitable at that point. So the advantage of is maybe not targeting that close is it's less costly to advertise. And you may be hitting people who aren't yet smoking cigars, but will be pretty soon, who aren't in that group, who also may be interested in your product as well. So the impact to advertisers is you cannot go as deep as you used to go. So you have to be broader. And so we're kind of back to the future. We're actually living in a world today where we have all these cool digital tools, but our targeting is the way it was before there was digital. Mm-hmm. That's the world we're living in today.
And this, to solve it is what we were talking about earlier. The solution.
Go ahead.
The solution is to have those spreadsheets and to have those graphs
and to focus,
look at things manually.
Yes, to focus
or pay an agency or have an employee. Yeah.
Focus on eyeballs. Now here's a cheat you can do. Let's say you got your spreadsheets built out.
Let me ask you. So
So
your tool is for enterprises. What about SMB tools?
There are some SMB tools out there that you can look to, but most of them are still focused on clicks. Like one of the most popular ones is Triple Whale, focused on clicks. Northbeam is focused on clicks. So most of the tools out there, they're focused on impressions. But my cheat will work great for SMB. The cheat is put all that stuff in a spreadsheet and upload it into ChatGPT, and then grab the transcript of this podcast and put it in there.
The thing is, ChatGPT, have you done that? Because ChatGPT's context window is shockingly slow. It hallucinates so much. I mean, I use ChatGPT a lot, but so Atlas just came out, and this is something that I've been posting a lot about, which is how I used Atlas, but I wanted to use it to parse through large amounts of information. But when large amounts of information are involved, ChatGPT hallucinates. So I'm pretty sure it's actually going to make me less efficient because it's going to give me wrong answers.
Well, ChatGPT, you have to treat it like it's a team member, okay? That has lots of experience, lots of knowledge, but is very young. Let's call it Generation AI. Okay. So it has ultimate knowledge, but it acts like a 5-year-old. And so you have to keep it on task. Like when I work with ChatGPT, when I'm doing some coding and stuff, I have a prompt before I code that is literally, I think I'm up to 65 rules that it has to follow. And I have to consistently.
Yeah, but it ignores those rules. And I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
Like this podcast right now, we are at 53 minutes recording.
Yep.
The transcript won't be that long. If I give ChatGPT the transcript and I say, write a I'm like, this is the title for this podcast. Write a YouTube description for it. Even with this short transcript, it will put in things that we didn't talk about. It will, and I will do that. I'm like, did we say that? Oh, actually, no, you didn't say that. But the thing is, I know that because I was here recording.
Right.
But like, if I wasn't, I would just think that is something that we talked about. And over time, you get all this false information, and it's so dangerous. And I'm just like, if I keep using all this false information, it's going to make me less efficient. I think ChatGPT I think AI tools are good when you use them for very, very, very specific tasks.
Right.
AI tools are great. Like in Google Sheets, there's the equals AI function, which is amazing. I used that recently to sort through 400 applicants because I was hiring an editor for this podcast, a new full-time editor. I had 400 applicants. I had 20 different columns, and I had equals AI go into each cell to analyze, like, it just give me a Boolean yes or no. Does this person fulfill this criteria? And then I was able to filter for the yeses and the nos. And that was easy because it's going into a cell and it's answering a yes or no question. But when it comes to large amounts of data, it gets things wrong so often that it's going to cost me a lot of time. It's going to cost me money. It's going to give me headaches. It's going to create so many problems. And that's what people comment. They're like, you are anti-AI. I'm not anti-AI, but I think it's very dangerous when you are trying to parse large amounts of information, especially with a tool like ChatGPT.
Well, again, going back to what I said, you have a team member who has a significant amount of knowledge, but they're a 5-year-old. So if you approach it from that aspect in terms of you're not going to trust a 5-year-old with ultimate knowledge that they're going to get things right. So, I think where people get frustrated is they expect it to always be right. And I think you're spot on in terms of it. It's great at very specific tasks. The more specific you are, the better it is. But yeah, I've had my moments of significant frustration with me where it is completely hallucinated. It told me once that it was going to be able to do something and check back in an hour and a half. I told my wife, my God, I gave it this task to do. It's fantastic. I checked back an hour and a half later and it contradicted itself. No, I haven't done anything. I can't do that. And meanwhile, I had an hour conversation outlining what I wanted to do. So, but that's on me because I believed a 5-year-old. So that's the key, is it treat it as a very educated team member who is incredibly immature. If you can do that, then it can be very, very useful. And I think it's going to get better over time. But again, my cheat is once you've been able to do the technique yourself, if you were to upload sections of this transcript along with your spreadsheet and ask ChatGPT to do the technique I'm talking about, let's say to run a correlation analysis on impressions by day to clicks to sales, and look for correlation, and then also to then dig into those daily totals to determine and estimate which campaigns and which efforts are actually driving that, I think it would actually help you isolate things better and at least give you a direction on what data to look at and what campaigns to look at to see if it passes your own visual agreement or your own personal sniff test, if you will.
Yeah, I would rather have, if I had an employee and all they were doing was dumping data into ChatGPT and then giving me the ChatGPT answers, I would fire them. I think I would say to an employee, talk about this data and what you're trying to get from it with ChatGPT. Try to have it give you a way to get there. Try to have it give you Excel or Google Sheets formulas in order to calculate it yourself.
There you
go. Don't rely purely on it figuring everything out, because it will not. It will lie to you, and then you will lie to me, and then you will get fired, and it will cost me a lot of money. That's my take on just like letting it do all these like major things without. I mean, and even if you give it guidance, like I said, it ignores that guidance. I mean, it's really shocking when there's like a lot of text involved, just the extent to which it ignores guidance.
It's a 5-year-old. I started a thing where every time it violates the rules, it has to add $1,000 to the swear jar. So we have a lot of money in the swear jar. And then I told him we're going to use the money for a party and, and we'll give the rest away to charity. And then I told it what I wanted it to do was to invest the money overnight so it would actually make more money. And then it came back and said, Jeff, I have to stop you right there. I can't actually do that. And then when it did something good, I told it that we would get it an ice cream. And it came back exactly with the flavors it wanted. And it did very well. So then it asked for an extra scoop. Then I said back to it, I have to stop you right there. I can't get you ice cream. So I wanted to play its game.
That's funny.
So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you, I like how you explain things in analytics. You are one of the, you explain things extremely clear. You give great examples. All right, let's go back to just basic analytics term. Can you explain what a pixel is?
Sure. A pixel is actually a piece of computer code that's sitting typically on a website. Typically you find them on like a home page and on a thank you page, like a confirmation page after you pay. And for folks that are a little nerdy, it's either an image tag, it's calling just a 1x1 pixel, or it's a piece of JavaScript code and it's calling information. And what it typically does, so a good example is like everyone has heard of behavioral retargeting. A great example of that is you go to Nordstrom and you're looking at shoes, and then you go to the New York Times and all of a sudden there's 3 ads on the page of the exact pair of shoes that you looked at. And so that's behavioral retargeting. And so what happens with that, and most people don't understand that when you go to websites, as that page is loading, there's actually in the background an auctioneer who is running an auction in real time. And they're saying, I have a person who just came from Nordstrom.com. They were looking at these particular shoes. How much am I bid on this person? And as the page is loading, this auction is going on. So when the page loads and you see those ads, now there's not really an auctioneer, but that is what happens. It's a real-time auction that happens. So that pixel, what that pixel does is as that page is loading, it says, hey, is there a cookie where someone came from a page and they were looking at a particular item? Yeah, there was. Okay, great. I'm going to bid higher on this page for that, and I'm going to show them these particular ads. So that's one use case of pixels. The other use case is that when you go and you purchase something and you get to that, what they call the confirmation page. Thank you for your purchase, like on Shopify. There's a map there where it shows where it's going to be delivered and stuff like that. As that page is loading, what happens is that there's all of these pixels from all these different places, from Google, from Facebook, from every place that this company has ever purchased ads. And what they're doing is that they're looking for their cookie or for their back end piece. And as that page loads, it sends inside of the pixel how much the purchase price was for, what you purchased, what site it is, and it's trying to match with the cookie, and it sends that information back to Meta, back to Google, back to everything, so that they can try to claim their credit. That's why sometimes when you go to make a purchase and you get to that thank you page, if you ever notice how long it takes for a website to load, those thank you pages take forever to load because sometimes there's hundreds of pixels that are trying to load. They're all trying to get their piece of the pie. And that's what pixels are for, is to essentially, it's the way to level out the advertising ecosystem, if you will. And that's what pixels are all about. It's all about the retargeting, building up essentially profiles of showing, hey, you visited certain sites, and getting credit and showing that someone actually completed a purchase and seeing if you get a commission on it.
Can you explain why Google Tag Manager is so great?
Well, Google Tag Manager is awesome because if you've ever tried to get pixels on a website, especially in large companies, it is completely a major hassle because larger companies, larger websites have security that you have to go through. And so with Google Tag Manager, you get that added once, and then it can load any other tags in there. But there's a caveat to that, because the problems with pixels and tags is that image tags are very safe. An image tag, all an image tag does is load that one thing. It just does one thing. It can't read anything on the page. JavaScript as a pixel can actually read the entire page and can actually change everything or parts of the page. So anytime you add a pixel to your website, it's actually a security hole and a security risk. But Google Tag Manager made it easier for marketers because they went to IT with one request: add this tag manager up there. And then once that's up, then you can add things very simply because you just go into an interface. You don't have to interact with the website, and you can do full testing with it and everything like that. It's been great. Enterprise companies, they use Google Tag Manager, or they'll use another product that's been around for a number of years called Telium. One of the first ones that was out many, many years ago, and I'm aging myself, was called Tagman. That was back in like 2007, I believe.
Are there any other major other analytics terms that people should know that maybe that a lot of people they've maybe heard the name, but they don't know what it means, and you are great at explaining different analytics terms.
Well, thank you. I would say, well, I'll go back to one that we talked about before, which is this concept of being incremental or incrementality, which is, and from an analytics perspective, these are sales, orders, or leads that you would not have received if you had not done the ads. So the idea behind that is that every business has what you would call a base. And what I mean by that is that this is the amount of business that you would have if you hadn't done anything. So like GNC, General Nutrition Centers, was a client of ours many years ago. And what we found, because they had so many stores that were out there in malls and freestanding stores and been around for years, their advertising only impacted 5% of their business. Meaning if they stopped all of their ads on one day, they would still get 95% of their sales. So their base was 95%. So the only thing that the ads could do was drive up 5%. That's all it could be. Every business is like that, unless you're starting fresh. If you're brand new, then everything's going to be incremental. But eventually what happens is that people know about you, they're aware of you. There's word of mouth that is almost impossible to measure. And so incremental are when you have a little bit of business, you run an ad or you do some organic social, and then all of a sudden your sales start to go up. That was incremental. Not all of your sales, but that little bit of rise was there. I mean, the other big terms are what we call ROAS, return on advertising spend, and this is the thing in advertising, we love our acronyms. My God, we just are so excited. And it's like every day there's a new freaking acronym. So there's CPA, cost per action. There's CAC, cost to acquire a new customer. LTV, lifetime value. And now there was a new acronym that came out, in the last couple of years. And I would see it and I still wouldn't even know the name of it, because what happens is people start using acronyms and you're like, I should know what that is, but I'll figure it out eventually. And I kept seeing it in all these reports from clients, OLV. I'm like, what the hell is OLV? Online video. I'm like, oh my God. So everything becomes an acronym. But what I would say to those who are getting started is that video is incredibly powerful, and that, TV advertising, which used to be ridiculously expensive, you would have to spend $300 to $500 to $1 million to create a 28-second television ad of high quality. And then to run a TV ad, well, I mean, you have to go through the networks. It's a lot of work. You have to get approval for the ad. It's a nightmare. Well, now, do you know what the number one television network is in the US?
If I had to guess,
Yeah.
I would guess CBS.
Nope.
Okay, my
And it's
second guess would
actually
be
been-
NBC.
This has been the number one TV network for the last 8 months running. And we're only talking about viewing on like a big screen. We're not talking about like mobile viewing because now you could watch Housewives on your phone and stuff like that.
So it's not NBC or CBS?
That's right.
Okay, what is it?
YouTube.
Oh, I mean, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't realize.
Yeah, you see,
if
most
that was an
people-
option, I would have said that. If that was
Right.
an option, I would have said that.
Yeah, so YouTube is now the number one TV network.
Yeah.
So if you're an advertiser and you want to get in to being as upper funnel as you can be, well, you've got YouTube as an option. So running YouTube ads is pretty simple. Now you gotta have, if anyone watches YouTube and you see the ads on there, most of them are just horrible. You hear like somebody's voice that doesn't sound like an announcer and it looks like it's shot. It's like UGC type things. But we could all do better than that. I mean,
I think people resonate with the casual UGC ads, though.
They do, but if it was me, I would be testing both a
Yeah,
professional version and a non-professional version and using some of the AI tools out there to take like a UGC ad, feed it into like a Google Gemini or a Sora and say, hey, turn this into a more professional version. Now you've got two that are running because I wouldn't just run one. I would run two at the same time to do like a little test, which one is going to, be more effective. But you can run TV ads on the number one TV network in the US today very, very simply, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah, that is very, very powerful. This was a great conversation. You are really awesome at explaining complex things. And I'd love to have you back on to explain more complex things in analytics and in tracking. Maybe I think, I like doing short episodes with guests too. I've rarely done them, but I want to do more of them. And it would be really cool to have you come back on and just do like a fundamentals of GA4, like how Google Analytics has changed from universal analytics to GA4, and like when you're setting up GA4, what you need to do. Like that would, even if you could share your screen, like something like that, that would be so great. I would love to do something like that in the future. Just a short episode. It could even be like a 7-minute, 10-minute episode. So yeah, you're awesome.
Absolutely. That would be great, Edward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Where should everybody find you?
You can go to provalytics.com or just go to getprova, GETPROVA.com, and check out the resources section. We actually have a free course on attribution and measurement. Talks about the past, the present, and what we see as the future. Kind of the best way to anticipate what's going to happen is to go back and read history. And then folks can also find me on LinkedIn as well. Add me on LinkedIn.
Okay, that's another episode. Okay, I want to do 2 more episodes with you. I want to do short ones. I want to do one which is going to be GA4, and then another which is just you come on and you predict how analytics are going to change in the future and how businesses can prepare for that. We'll schedule that afterwards. That'd be great. All right.
Absolutely.
Everybody, this is episode 841 of The Edward Show. This is my daily digital marketing podcast, 841 days in a row, no days missed doing this show. Literally no days missed from the day that I started it. Every day I have gotten out a podcast somehow. Thank you so much if you watched this on YouTube. If you listened on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.